Hey guys, just wanted to hop on here and talk about a challenge I think every business owner has, right? And it's dealing with emotions. And specifically, one of the questions I get asked as we're working through a roadmap with somebody, and there's challenges that inevitably pop up, is how do you deal with negative emotions? And I want to kind of clarify that, right? All emotions are signals to our brain, right? So it's signals from our brain to either do something or not do something. So when we talk about positive emotions, the global message of a positive emotion is to stay put, right? Keep doing more of that, right? It's a sign that we're on track, right? When we experience what we call negative emotions are really messages that something needs to change, right? So it's a sign from our brain that we need to take action, that we need to move, something needs to change. Now, when something needs to change, there's only two options, right? We can change our perspective about something or we can change our approach. But something must change because if we keep doing the same thing, all that emotion's going to do is intensify. So some people, when they get a negative emotion, the response is to ignore it, right? But because that's not actually changing the overall stimuli to the brain, a brain just sends out more and more urgency until you have to pay attention to it. So what we're going to talk about today is, as a business owner, what are some of the emotions we typically experience, and what is the message they're trying to give us, and then what should we do about it? So that's what I want this video to be about. Um, and I get that, this goes outside of the strategies and talking about marketing and sales and what I'm typically known for, but I find that this is a piece that often just gets in the way of people being able to, do those things and get results in those things. So I'm going to give you like 10 broad categories of negative emotions, right? So, and remember, negative emotions, they're not negative. The reason they feel uncomfortable or the reason they feel negative is because they're actually a signal to your brain saying something needs to change. We need to move, right? So there's 10 broad categories that I want to kind of talk about. One is uncomfortable, one is fear, one is hurt, anger, which is fourth one. Fifth one is frustration. Sixth one is disappointment. Seventh one is guilt. Eighth is inadequacy. Nine is you're overloaded, pretty common one for business owners. And 10 is lonely, another pretty common one. So I want to kind of tap into each of these and talk about what they are. So uncomfortable emotions, right? They're not, so if we take the first broad category, uncomfortableness, it's not really an intense emotion. It doesn't have a tremendous amount of intensity. Like if you're uncomfortable, it's not a really intense thing, but they do bother us and they create this nagging sensation that things aren't quite right. And over time, they can start to build up. In fact, what I've actually found a lot of the time, uncomfortable gets described as comfortable, right? Like, "Oh, I'm comfortable," and comfortable becomes almost the excuse or how we ignore the fact that we're actually uncomfortable. So the message here is, and by the way, uncomfortable could come out in the form of boredom. It can come out in the form of feeling impatient, a bit uneasy, distressed, maybe. Maybe you have some mild embarrassment, like you don't really want to be seen. These are all sending you that message that something is not quite right, right? So maybe the way you're perceiving things is off, right? Or maybe the actions you're taking are not producing the results you really, really want. So what is the solution here? When you feel uncomfortable, then the signal is to change your state, change how you're feeling, right? So one of the best ways to do this is really get clear about what you want. Really sit down. So this is the importance of having your goals written out and having your goals written out in a really specific way. Get clear about what you want, then take action, create progress in that direction, right? So do something that moves you closer to that goal and not something in the future, something right now. So one of the best things you can do if you're feeling uncomfortable is clarify what you want and then move in that direction immediately. It'll change your emotional state. So clarify what you do want, right? And try a slightly different approach than maybe you've been trying up to this point. and to see if you can immediately change the way you're feeling about the situation and change the quality of the results you're producing. So this is that idea of just get started, move, right? Often that is the solution to feeling uncomfortable. So the second really broad category is this idea of fear. So fearful emotions, they include everything from low levels of feeling concerned and maybe apprehensive to really intense worries, anxieties, frights, even terror, right? Fear serves a purpose, and its message is really, really simple. Fear is simply the anticipation that something that's going to happen soon needs to be prepared for, right? So I used to do Boy Scouts as a child, and our motto in Boy Scouts, if you've done it, it was be prepared, right? We need either to prepare to cope with the situation or to do something to change it. That is the message of fear. The tragedy is that most people either try to deny their fear by trying to convince themselves they're not scared, or they wallow in it. Neither of these approaches is respecting the message that fear is actually trying to give you. So it will continue to pursue you as it tries to get its message across. And in fact, it will intensify over time. So you don't want to surrender to fear and amplify it by starting to think of the worst that could happen. You also don't want to pretend it's not there, because if you pretend it's not there, it's going to intensify until you do something about it. So, what should you do if you're feeling fear then? You need to review what you're feeling fearful about, right? And you need to evaluate what you must do to prepare yourself immediately. Figure out what are the actions you need to take to deal with the situation in the best possible way. So think about it. If that were to happen, how you do this. So one of the things I'll do is I'll ask myself, right, how likely is it to happen? Right? And then how impactful would it be? And then what would I need to do to moderate that, right? What would I need to do to prepare for that? What would I do if it showed up? Sometimes we've done all the preparation we can for something, right? There's nothing else we can do, but we still, we still have this feeling of fear. This is the point when you must use the antidote. You must have faith, right? That it's not showing up. You've got to learn how to let go of the fear at that stage. You tell yourself, I prepared for this. The likelihood is it's X. So I rate myself 1 to 10, right? I go, look, how likely is this to happen? 1 being not likely, 10 being absolutely certainty. How devastating would it be if it happened? 1 being it'd be mildly annoying, to 10 being it'd be catastrophic. Usually you're not going to get any one of those. So most people fall somewhere in between 2 and 8, maybe. If it's high, then I probably should do something about it. If it's low, maybe I can show myself, then go look, like if it showed up, what would you do about it? And then go, okay, let it go until it shows up. There's no sense being worried about this, and have a bit of faith that you'll get through it. The third broad category is hurt, right? Hurt is one of those ones that really kind of messes up. Hurt is one of those ones that can really kind of hurt client relationships, employee relationships, relationships at home, intimate relationships. And feelings of hurt are usually brought on by a sense of loss, right? So when people are hurt, they often lash out and hurt others, right? So we need to hear the real message that hurt gives us. And the message that hurt gives us is that an expectation that we have towards something has not been met. Many times this feeling arises when we've expected somebody to keep their word and they didn't, right? So um, in this case, the feeling of loss that you have, right? So the loss that you've had here could be maybe loyalty, maybe intimacy with somebody, maybe it's loss of trust, right? But there's that feeling of loss that actually causes this feeling of hurt, right? So the solution here is you have to realize, you have to kind of go see that you haven't really lost anything, right? Maybe you need to lose the false perception that this person is trying to wound or hurt you, right? Maybe they don't even realize the impact that their actions have had on you. Maybe they weren't aware of what expectation you had of the relationship because it was never really communicated. Um, Take a moment and reevaluate the situation. Ask yourself, is there really a loss here, right? Or am I judging this situation too soon or too harshly even? A third solution could be to um, eloquently and professionally and appropriately communicate your sense of loss to the person involved, right? Tell them the other day, when this happened, I misinterpreted that to mean that you didn't care or that you weren't supportive or backing of what we're trying to do here as a company. And because of that, I have this like kind of sense that you're disloyal or the sense that of loss. Can you help me clarify what really happened? Because I don't really think that was you, right? So I don't think that's accurate what happened. So can you help me clarify what happened or what your actions really meant? Simply by changing your communication style, often you can figure out what's going on, right? And you'll find that the hurt disappears in a matter of moments just by opening up communication, right? The next category is another one of those areas that really can be damaging as a business owner or to a person personally, and it's anger, right? Anger emotions include everything from being mildly irritated to being super angry, resentful, furious, or even enraged, right? The message of anger is that an important rule or standard that you hold in your life has been violated by someone else, or maybe even you, right? So the solution here is to realize that you've misinterpreted the situation completely and that your anger about this person breaking your rules may be based on the fact that they didn't know the most important rule to you, or realizing that the person didn't violate one of your standards or that your rules are not necessarily the right rules, or even though you feel as strongly as you do about them, they might not be everybody's rules or a global rule that everybody should hold dear to them. So ask yourself a more empowering question like, in the long run, is this true that this person really cares about me? Or is this true that this person really is loyal or trying to do the right thing? Or do I believe their intentions were good here, right? Interrupt the anger by asking, what can I learn from this? How can I communicate the importance of these standards that I hold for myself for this person in a way that really causes them to want to help me and not violate my standards again in the future? All right, the fifth category is frustration. Frustration can come in many avenues. Um, Anytime we feel like we're surrounded by roadblocks in our life or challenges are being continually put up in front of us, we're going to feel frustrated, right? The message of frustration is actually an exciting signal. It means that your brain believes you could be doing better than you currently are. Your brain believes you can get through this. So if you're frustrated by something, your brain actually believes it's possible and is searching for a way through. Frustration is very different from disappointment, which is a feeling that there's something you want in your life that you'll never get, right? Frustration, in contrast, is a very positive sign. It's a sign from your brain saying, I believe we can do this, right? But I'm not getting it yet, so I'm frustrated. It means that the solution to your problem is within range and that what you're currently doing isn't working and you need to change your approach in order to achieve this goal. It's a signal for you to become more flexible, right? So realize that the frustration is your friend and brainstorm new ways to get a result. So really sit down and go, look, how else can I approach this? How can I flex this approach? How can I try something new? Who could I talk to? Who's gotten this result before that can guide me right here? Get some input on how to deal with the situation. Find a role model, find a mentor, find a coach, someone who has found a way to get what you want and find out from them how to get it. And then ask for their input on how you might more effectively produce this result, right? Get fascinated, get curious. This is what frustration wants us to have is, get curious about how to do this. don't spend your energy being frustrated. Spend your time using that energy instead to get curious, to go learn, to talk to people, to find a way. Right. Now, I briefly mentioned this one in the previous one. Disappointment is the next category. You know, disappointment can be a really destructive emotion if you don't know how to deal with it quickly. Disappointment is a devastating feeling of being let down or that you're going to miss out on something forever, right? Anything that makes you feel sad or defeated as a result of expecting more than you get is disappointing. And the message of disappointment often offers you that the expectation that you had for a goal or that something you were really going for is probably not going to happen. So it's time to change your expectations and make them more appropriate for the situation and take action to achieve a new goal immediately. And that is actually, in fact, the solution as well. Immediately figure out something you can learn from the situation that could help you in the future to achieve the very thing you were after in the first place, or set a new goal, something that may be even more inspiring or something that can make more immediate progress towards. Realize that you may be judging yourself a little too soon in this case, right? Often the things we're disappointed with are just temporary challenges. You know, there's this old saying that said, God's delays are not God's denials. You may just be in what's, commonly referred to as lag time, right? So often people set themselves up for disappointment. It'd be like going out to a garden, right? And you plant the seeds and coming out the next day and being disappointed there's not a plant there. Well, that's not really how it works. So maybe you need to change your perspective on how long this is going to take. Maybe you need to change your approach. Maybe you need to change your goal, but that is the solution to disappointment. Now, guilt is the seventh category. It's emotions of guilt, regret, remorse, along with um, other ways of kind of looking at guilt. And it's when we've sacrificed something we desire or a value that we have for something we may need, right? And it's a painful emotion. And it really says you've violated one of your standards or values, right? And that you do something immediately ensure that you do not violate that again. So when you're feeling guilty, it's not because of something you've done to somebody else. It's something that you know within yourself isn't who you are, right? And so I guess take condolences in the fact, or take some sort of satisfaction in the fact that when you're feeling guilty about something, it's actually you saying, I'm not this. I'm not what I've displayed. I'm not the behavior that I've just shown, right? I'm more than that. And so you have to acknowledge with guilt, you have to acknowledge the fact that you violated a critical standard. A lot of people will try and justify why they did it, but really you have to acknowledge to yourself, I violated a standard, a critical standard I hold for myself. Absolutely commit yourself to making sure that this behavior will never happen again in the future, right? Rehearse in your mind how you could live out that scenario again and deal with that same scenario in a way where it doesn't violate your personal standards or your personal values, right? As you commit beyond the shadow of doubt that you will never allow this behavior to occur again, you'll be able to let go of the guilt in your life. Guilt has then served its purpose to drive you, right, to that higher standard that you hold for yourself. And it will let go of you at that stage. So when you feel guilty, utilize it. Like take advantage of it. Don't wallow in it. Now, here's another one, and I know that this one comes up. Often we refer to this in business as the imposter syndrome, and it's really the emotion of inadequacy, right? This feeling of unworthiness like occurs anytime we feel we can't do something or should be able to do something, right? Or that we're not there. The challenge, of course, is that we often have a completely unfair rule for determining whether we're inadequate, right? Now, the message is that you presently don't have the level that you need, the level of skill that you need to perform a task at hand. And it's telling you that you need more information, you need more practice, you need more time, more strategies, more tools, more confidence. You need to actually go practice getting this result. And it is the idea that you got to get to work, right? So Simply ask yourself, is this really an appropriate emotion for me to feel in this situation? Am I really inadequate, or do I just have to change the way I'm perceiving things? Is the feeling justified, or is it I'm just new at this, right? And I'm capable of learning these skills. I just got to get to work, right? I got to start doing it, right? Because when we feel inadequate, it can keep us from even getting started. And if we really lean into what inadequacy is really trying to tell us is you don't have the level of skill that you need in order to get this, do this task or get this result. So it tells us to get to work. It tells us to go and seek that knowledge and learn it, right? If you really lean into what imposter syndrome is trying to tell you, then really you can let go of it because you will lose it in the process of gaining that knowledge and that skill set. Number nine is another really common one that I've had, and it's this idea of being overloaded or overwhelmed. Grief, depression, helplessness, they're all different expressions of feeling overwhelmed, right? So grief happens when you feel like there is no empowering meaning or something has happened to you, and there's just you've lost something or it's impacted people or events or forces outside of your control and you start to grieve. But really, grief is just feeling overwhelmed, right? People in this feeling of overwhelm often become overwhelmed because they feel there's nothing they can do to change the situation, that the problem's too big. It's permanent, it's pervasive, it's personal, like it's just me. It's like, the cards I've been dealt, right? People go into these emotional states whenever they feel or perceive the world in a way that makes them feel like there's more going on than they could possibly deal with, right? So the message here of being overwhelmed is that you really need to evaluate what's most important. So overwhelmed is just a call to prioritize, right? The reason you're feeling overloaded is you're trying to deal with too many things at once. And not all of them are actually important to you. They may be things that have been put on you by somebody else, and you're trying to change everything overnight, right? So it's a bit unfair in that sense as well. The feeling that being overloaded or overwhelmed disrupts or destroys more people's lives than just about any other emotion that I can even think of. Is a number of the coaching calls I do have to have with people when I'm doing turnaround management. Often the pervasive thing here is they're overwhelmed, right? So what's the solution? Decide out of all the things you're going to do and that you're absolutely doing in your life, which ones are important, right? Which ones actually matter, and start to prioritize. Write down all those things. Start to break out your calendar so that you're allocating time to things that are most important to you. Look at the stuff that then falls outside of that and ask yourself, what would happen if I didn't do it, if I didn't focus on it? Maybe you can get somebody else to do it. Maybe it sits in somebody else's wheelhouse. Maybe you don't need to do it at all. Maybe it doesn't actually really matter that much, right? This is one area that you really have to master in business, or it's going to destroy your company, basically. So I spend a lot of time working on this, and this is a bit of a moving piece. And I call it my calendar control or my time principles. It's how I manage my time so I don't get overwhelmed. Right. Number 10 is the feeling of loneliness, right? Feeling alone or feeling apart or feeling separate. You can feel lonely even if you're around people. So, have you ever really felt super lonely? Right? I don't think there's anybody alive that hasn't felt that. And really, the message of loneliness is that you need to connect with people, right? What does the message mean? It means, people often think that loneliness is sexual connection, or it's this idea that you have to have intimacy with somebody, and it's not. It's a feeling of just needing to connect with somebody else. So it could be a conversation, it could be picking up the phone, it could happen with a client, it could happen with an employee, it could happen with a friend, but it is the idea of you opening up, right? It's you just getting something out. It's you feeling safe to kind of share and connect and do that. So that is the solution. If you're ever feeling lonely, just connect, right? Find a way to engage with a real live human person that engages back. So often I see people do the safe thing where they send out an email or they do a social post. And likes aren't a human connection back. You don't really get any immediate return on that. So the last category is loneliness, and it really is just it's telling you, hey, love bug, you need to go and connect with somebody. And I hope you get kind of the real message around all of these so you can embrace the negative emotions that show up and use them, utilize them to actually make your business better. Look, guys, I appreciate you taking the time. You made it all the way through this video. And as always, if you need help, check out elevaterise.com.au. And we're here to actually help you make more while working less so that you can afford the lifestyle you want and have the time to live it, right? And as part of that, we take a holistic approach to helping you achieve that, right? My name is Mike Johnson. Much love. Have a good day.